This live presentation was produced in Ashland, Oregon by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. RVML relies on the support of our volunteers, members, and donors to organize and present these programs. For more information about this presentation, or to borrow, download, or purchase other recordings from our catalog, please visit our website at rvml.org.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I want to really acknowledge Jordan. He's done an incredible job putting together this metaphysical library. I don't usually do a regular talk circuit. This is unusual for me to come out here and do this, but have a lot of information to share, and it'll be pretty fast moving, and put it together with the secret government, covert operations, with the energy devices that we've been measuring over last year for about 9 months. Trying to cover both subjects together in a 2-hour period, it's pretty insane, you know. It's a lot of information. So what I'd like to do is do a little survey that will help me answer most of your questions, so we make the most use of the time of the presentation to cover the areas that you're mostly interested. There's no sense in going over things that you're already aware of and you don't have to repeat. So if I could ask a little survey of a show of hands, it would be kind of interesting to me, because I can devote my time into where to put the lecture. I don't like to call it lecture, presentation. And give everybody else an idea where everybody else is. So I'm going to ask some basic, simple questions. How many believe there's no such thing as extraterrestrial visitors? It's kind of a stupid question. Because if, especially this group, you know, because if there were, they would have landed on the White House lawn or made themselves known, or the government or the media would have told us about it. I thought so. Okay, how many believe, just like they're portrayed in most of the movies that you see, that ETs are probably evil and hostile and want to take over our planet? Okay. Movies aren't making much effect on people, okay. Believe that if the truth was disclosed, our society probably could not handle it. Okay, got a couple of them. Yeah, it's 2004 now, you know. Believe the government is looking after our best interest in not disclosing the information. Okay. Well, this is a great group. Believe there is a secret government operating apart and clandestinely within our government that has kept the real truth about ET interaction covered up in the media. All right, we can bypass a lot of stuff here. Are aware of the disclosure event that occurred in National Press Club back in May of 2001, broadcast on the major media? Really? Well, how many people actually saw it on the on television, on CNN and things? Oh, okay.
Is that the Phoenix Lights or the Mexico Lights?
I'm a little hard of hearing. I have to apologize. I forgot to grab my hearing aid. I was in a code room for like 2 years in the Navy, listening to Morse code all the time, so it did a number on my hearing. So
he asked if that was the Phoenix Light or the Mexico sightings.
No, it was totally different. Totally different. It was about military and intelligence operatives that were coming forth to testify under oath. It was on the National Press Club. It was a totally different situation. Okay. If you were to have the lecture go toward the secret government covert operations or the energy device measurements, which have been traveling with Rebecca last year for 9 months, staying with Dr. Greer at a laboratory and going around the world measuring these different devices and having these dialogues with these different inventors and things, which area would be of most interest? Raise your hand if it's covert secret government operations. Okay. Or energy device. Energy device. Okay. Interesting. Okay. All right. I got a hold of this little MPEG editor on my computer, so I've been taking information and distilling it down to make it as fast-paced as I can on a lot of information. But I'll go over a little bit about my background. I happen to be one of, I'm only one of 450 plus, probably over 500 witnesses. I had a top secret clearance in the military. I just happened to be exposed to extraterrestrial information about the ETs being under the ocean and the ships reporting them and going off into space. My testimony was, pretty trivial compared to the other guys that joined me, which had, nuclear launch facilities that they shut down, discovered bases on the dark side of the moon with mushroom-shaped and spherical buildings, and and all the other people, and inside the people were on the ET retrieval teams, had some pretty, and a lot of people had documentation things. So one more question. How many people have seen the executive summary briefing of the Disclosure Project? Okay. It's a long one. It was originally 120 hours, boiled down to 4 hours, which we gave to Capitol Hill and the Pentagon to members of Congress and met with, the Oregon senators and Congress people. Basically, they won't touch it because, it's too hot of a subject. Not unless there's enough public outcry, they're not going to do anything. After we did the national, well, I'll just play a little video clip. It's 5 minutes long. Back in 1969, I worked at this place, which I got in trouble for taking a picture of. The top secret facility that now it's closed down, but it was a major communication hub in the whole world for the military. I was in this code room for 2 years, one of the ships. Let's see, we got audio? Jordan? Okay. Anyway, that's where it came in. I was in this room with all these speakers around, and this one ship was basically reporting a reddish-orange elliptical object about 70 feet in diameter. Came out of the ocean, and the ship's radar tracked it going over 7,000 miles per hour. And then I joined 20 other witnesses at the National Press Club. And you can see there's like 26 cameras back there, all the major media.
My name is Dan Willis. I was in the United States Navy. I held a top secret crypto level 14 extra sensitive material handling security clearance. I worked in the code room at the Naval Communications Station in San Francisco. In 1969, I received a priority message from a ship near Alaska that was classified as secret. The ship reported emerging out of the ocean near port bow, a brightly glowing reddish-orange elliptical object, approximately 70 feet in diameter, emerged out of the water, shot into space, traveling at about 7,000 miles per hour. This was tracked on ship's radar and substantiated.
Okay, and right after that went out, CNN and CBS did a...
Life on other planets? Some former military and government personnel say they have proof there is. Elaine Quijano explains.
There was all these testimonies about secret government operations.
We've seen the photographs and heard the stories of what some say is evidence of UFOs. Now a group of scientists, former Air Force and FAA officials is lending its voice to the argument that we are not alone. Dr. Stephen Greer heads up the Disclosure Project, a group that compiles information from people who say they've encountered extraterrestrial forms of life.
We can establish through this testimony that these objects of extraterrestrial origin have been tracked on radar going thousands of miles per hour, stopping and making right-hand turns.
Since 1993, Dr. Greer says he has videotaped testimony from more than 100 people about what they say are close encounters. People like retired Navy Commander pilot Graham Bethune, who believes he saw a UFO 50 years ago while flying to Newfoundland.
Then it appeared over to the right and moved out slowly and flew with us. It was still not at our altitude, but we could see the shape of it. It had a dome.
In addition, the Disclosure Project says it has documents supporting its case, including FAA records and CIA memos. What do members plan to do with their information? They hope Congress and President Bush take notice. They want to see congressional hearings into the matter, despite criticism from skeptics.
Those that don't want to believe you will never believe you anyway, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't change the truth.
A spokesperson for the Senate Science, Technology, and Space Committee says no congressional hearings are planned right now.
I just want to make a comment that, the testimonies we're talking about, a president being denied access, such as the CIA director, like Carter had a UFO experience and he wanted to have the information released, and the director of the Central Intelligence, which was George Bush Sr., denied him access. And a whole bunch of different things were given testimony about NASA employees airbrushing them out and all that, and the dark side of the moon, alien bases, kind of, real, heavy stuff, coming out. And all they're saying on the news, notice they clipped it. When it gets into the editing room, they very carefully just select out certain information. So it looks like you got all these military people coming together just to say that, oh, we're lending our voice, that we're not alone in the universe, that UFOs are real, So when you try to think about, is this going to justify any congressional hearings? They're like, no way, it doesn't impact your life directly. Now the next is CBS Special Assignment. They saw me on CNN, so they came down from LA, did an interview with me, and I said, look, I'm not going to do an interview unless you promise I can say one thing. That is, we have the scientists willing to go forth in congressional hearings to prove that we have energy devices that can end the energy crisis and stop pollution and like that. And oh yes, I promise. So I talked for about 40 minutes, and when it got done, I called her up and said, what happened? Oh, the higher executives up. They made me cut out all the good parts, but we still got some coverage. And she was almost like in tears, that they couldn't do it. They had to just have the part that just like CNN did.
Elaine?
We are not alone. That's the message a group of pilots, scientists, and former government officials want Congress to hear. Ken Shotnick shows us tonight what some people are calling a UFO cover-up.
I've never seen it. Look at that.
I don't know, but I got it on tape.
A strand of moving light in the sky over Phoenix. A bright glowing streak dashing through West Covina. What looks like a flying saucer tracked on radar over Mexico City. Are these UFOs caught on tape? Dan Willis is a former radio operator for the Navy.
I took personally communications from ships that were reporting the extraterrestrial craft merging out of the ocean and shooting off into space.
He's among a group of scientists, military, and former FAA officials calling for congressional hearings to establish the presence of UFOs and extraterrestrials. 21 members of that group already have testified in Washington for what's known as the Disclosure Project. Dr. Stephen Greer is the director of the Disclosure Project. He's gathered 400 witnesses who say it's time for government secrecy to end.
We can establish through this testimony that these objects of extraterrestrial origin have been tracked on radar going thousands of miles per hour.
It's come to a critical point where the truth needs to be revealed to the people.
They believe a congressional hearing is the only way to set the record straight.
The Disclosure Project has its work cut out for it because as of right now, no congressional hearings are planned. For CBS 2 News Special Assignment, I'm Ken.
Well, yeah, the truth does need to be revealed to the people. So here I am, trying to extend some more information out to everybody. And, the full story is like a science fiction story, when you get into the whole thing. But when you start getting all the witness testimonies together and you're connecting all the dots together, it starts to paint a picture. And, everybody has to come to their own conclusion as you're researching all this. Let's see. I tried to write out some type of structure to go by, but I'm just going to give a little bit of information. I first got involved in this back some time ago, and I went out to Area 51 to meet with Bob Lazar, who was supposedly an engineer that worked on the UFO facilities, and John Lear. And when I was out there, had some interesting information. And years later, Dr. Greer got a classified document. It was a NRO security advisor telling about that group meeting, which I thought was kind of interesting. You note on this document, it's saying to basically stay clear of any of these people that are there. This is to the base on Area 51. And it's interesting, the cosmic ops and magi ops on the document, you know. What seems to have happened is back in the 40s, when the ships crashed, they basically took the information, and during the Eisenhower era, they lost control of it, and they needed to have these things reverse engineered by some of the most intelligent scientists, which were part of these major corporations. And then the corporations basically had people who were some of the most influential people in the world, had their into a multi-trillion-dollar energy industry. And so that if they were to release some of this technology, which they released a lot, they disseminated into the public, such as, you know, the integrated circuits, lasers, fiber optics, like that. Both the anti-gravity and you know, free energy systems they kept, you know, because it would affect the geopolitical control of the whole planet. Let's see, do we have any questions so far? Yeah, go ahead.
Dan, I was wondering if Podesta's briefing a year or two ago affected the energy in Washington, and if you heard about any, you know, effect or fallout from Podesta, you know, coming out and saying cover-up exists. John Podesta, you know, he came out some time ago. Clinton's chief of staff, you know.
Oh yeah, that one Joint Chiefs of Staff.
John Podesta was Clinton's chief of staff. You know, came out a year or two ago saying all this is real. And I was wondering if you'd heard any positive fallout from that.
I haven't heard anything on that. I haven't.
Can I ask you just one question? Is it your belief that radar was back engineered from the UFO? That's what I was told.
I don't know. I would say not, because I think most of the stuff happened in the 40s at the time they had radar. And in fact, it was the radar was causing the ships to crash. So the ships are not like the aircraft that we have, which is controlled by, you know, meters and switches and control levers. Their ships are formed totally different, where it's actually formed out of primordial matter, and these things are connected to the beings themselves, and the consciousness that actually has like its own living consciousness that operates with the pilots themselves. I mean, it's technology that's like far beyond stuff that we have. And what happened is the radar pulse, when it hit the craft, it threw the thing off and caused them to crash. So, you know, the government saw it immediately as like, oh, this is advanced technology, we can use it against our adversaries. So they thought, well, you know, for national security, we need to keep this quiet. And what happens when it got into the control of the major corporations during the Eisenhower era, they basically used the government's own secrecy system against us. You have what's called unacknowledged special access projects, where the president or the director of the CIA requests information and you have to deny it. So they've kind of like, these secret government operations have gotten within our government, and they operate within our government, and they use the government's own secrecy system to hide and bring in billions of dollars to these funding operations, all of which are not under constitutional law and are illegal. But there's no way that the people will know about it, because those operations are the CIA, NSA operatives. Daniel Sheehan, our legal counsel, has shown a list of 42 or 43 operatives that are in every single major media And we just recently got a CIA document to confirm that they're in every single, then they'll you know, cut a story if it goes against, you know, quote, national security. So the people are never going to be able to find out about this, and the people in the military trying to disclose this, they can't because they're operating in that system. So that's why Dr. Greer, you know, when he met with the CIA director, and the CIA director would basically said, quote, this is kind of interesting to see exactly what he said. Quote, I know they exist, but I want to know what the hell is going on. Why I can't find out about this, who's keeping it secret, and why, unquote. So, so you know, the military, the high up ranks and everything, they want the people who are aware that this stuff's going on, they're frustrated. They can't do anything. They've got their hands tied. So they were actually supporting Dr. Greer in doing this, so only a civilian effort could do it. You try to go to, I met with, you know, Congressman Greg Walden, Bob Smith, you know, Oregon senators and Congress people sat there on the table along with Captain Salas, Dr. Carol Rosin, worked with Werner von Braun, the rocket scientist. And I told them, you know, well, if this is a hoax, if we're lying about this, we should be punished. We should go to jail. You know, I was kind of like, I said all we're asking is to look into it for a hearing. And this is all pre-9/11 stuff. They had nothing major on their table at that time, but all of them gave like just blank stares, won't even touch it. After I toured with Dr. Greer on most of the West Coast circuit. We went to Colorado, San Diego, LA, San Francisco, Portland, Eugene, you know, Ashland. And, you know, every time that we met with media and everything, I would hang out, you know, in the back room to see. I used to be an ABC newsman. I used to be a chief engineer for the most powerful FM station on the West Coast for many years. So I had sort of interest to see how the news people were covering it. And like in San Francisco, we heard that the reporter said, well, make fun of it. So they said, you know, the Disclosure Project is looking to aliens to solve the world's energy crisis. And let me show you one clip. You heard of the giggle factor? Yeah. When we were up in Portland, it's hard to get video clips of all this stuff because, you know, you're out there doing it on the circuit and people, you know, sometimes you can get somebody to record it. I was able in San Diego, they had little dancing alien dolls, you know, with UFOs in the background, so that totally, you know, make fun of it and discredit it. This is channel 12 in Portland. My only giggle factor example I have.
Energy tonight is out of this world, really. The Disclosure Project is a non-profit research effort that identifies top secret military and government witnesses to UFO and extraterrestrial events. Project members say the government is hiding information about energy sources derived from UFOs, technology that they say could help us here on Earth.
This is an enormous issue where technologies have been illegally sequestered from the public that could completely solve the environmental problems as well as get us off of fossil fuels.
He says these technologies include anti-gravity propulsion systems, zero-point and over-unity energy. Lots of people showed up for that forum. Kurt?
Blazer fans, your long wait between playoff games is almost over. They finally tip off Game 2 tomorrow night.
And the team has returned to Los Angeles, where the Lakers sit comfortably on a 1-0 series lead. Dan Christofferson is in for Tim Becker with a trend that might work in Portland's favor, huh?
I'm doing Kurt's thing.
Yeah, give me something, please. I'm dying out here.
UFOs and energy. Let's get to the big story.
Let's go to Shaq. He's an extraterrestrial.
There you go.
No kidding.
He can solve the world's power problems.
That's right. All right. You know what? They've had a lot of time off, and with all these days off, the Blazers and Lakers, you know, the players are following the rest of the NBA playoffs, and what's been going on is a promising sign for the Blazers, or fair warning.
Anyway, oh, let's see. That's the only example I have, but I wish I would have gotten the San Francisco one. That was a good one. We're making big time fun of it. But what we've discovered is that you go to the National Press Club, major media, and in England they were picketing with signs in front of Parliament saying, expose the secret government, release the free energy devices. In the UK they were covering it much better. The UFO magazine said, oh, they let out a big yawn afterward. Nothing new was brought to the table, you know. On all the major networks, and nobody ever got the message that we've basically been infiltrated by illegal secret government operations that are going on. And you try to do the circuit across the United States, doing the major cities, lots of publicity, and the news media, they will basically, make fun of it, and it's like a little thing. So it's really a hard thing to do. I got a little frustrated, and I decided to put an online fax on the website, so because people don't have time to write letters and stuff like that. And here are some examples of the responses. We sent over 20,000 faxes have gone off to Washington, the last count, which was a couple of months ago. Individually written letters to the president, your local representative congresspeople, and also I got the database numbers of all the world embassies, to different countries, and so you can send it out to that. And I'd have people send back the responses when they got a response to see what the attitude was on Capitol Hill. And this is what we got. Oh, yeah, you can read that real good, huh? Anyway, it basically says I've learned, about the Disclosure Project and the witnesses, and it has implications about the energy, and the, that wanting to see congressional hearings. If you'd like to have more information, we have people edit it because people get form letters; they just go in the trash. But people have to edit it and put a little bit of their own words into it. And some of the responses were, oh God. Like, for example, this is from the White House. The President appreciates the interest, although prompted to write. However, because of the large number of similar requests received by the White House, we must decline your request. Here's another one. What we found is I've gotten like 75 faxes from the president and from different Congress, and pretty much the attitude is, well, if we ever have hearings on extraterrestrials, we'll keep your views in mind. Thank you very much. Kind of like a brush-off letter, it's kind of one of those templates. But it's interesting, some of them. This one says about the government should be active but not limited, engaging but not overbearing. Your views are helpful to my staff, and so forth, President Bush is strongly committed to pursuing policies and programs that meet America's priorities, and blah, 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 Let's see. Oh, this one's from, this one's an interesting one. This is from Representative Johnny Ikeson of Georgia. Thank you for contacting my office regarding the Disclosure Project. Unfortunately, you've been victimized by an internet hoax. The Disclosure Project is nothing more than a fundraising device for its founders. To my knowledge, no investigation work of any substance has been performed by this organization. It goes on and on. A lot of them quote that NASA has established that there's no such things as UFOs, and so forth and so on.
Do you think the representatives really believe those answers? Do you think they really believe those answers?
I think my personal opinion, and I don't know everything, and I'm just relaying what I've experienced on this whole situation, is that they must have been indoctrinated to some kind of protocol, because looking at all the letters, I try to look for a commonality. And let me show you what I've discovered. This is on the, if you go to disclosureproject.org, it's on this website. I did an analysis out of 72 faxes. 0 were positive action, that said they're going to do something. 8 were they had an interest in it. 34 of them had, will keep your views in mind without any current legislation. There's nothing addressed, so we'll thank you for your opinions. 3 was not my department, saying I have nothing to do with this. 8 said this is not a priority, and this is pre 9/11. That there's more things that are more important than this, meaning they think, well, it just has to do with reality of UFOs. 17 is evidence denial, stating NASA documents and DIA and stuff like that. 2 are completely inappropriate, like saying it's an internet hoax. And that makes up 72 letters. And what I get is that they've been somehow given some type of format, because there's a lot of similarities in how to respond to it. I notice the responses are quoting certain things from NASA, and they're given like, here, if you get this kind of thing about the disclosure project, here's your response forms. That's my own personal opinion. I don't know what's gone on, but I notice not one has said, thank you very much. I've contacted Disclosure. I've looked at the information. It needs attention. I'm going to see what I can do about getting some congressional hearings. Not one has done that. And quite honestly, I can't really say the names, but 2 of the congresspeople did admit that there's a secret government in control of this issue, that they really couldn't do anything about it. Yes?
Of the energy devices that you tested, how many of them, in your opinion, were back engineered?
Well, the energy device, Nikola Tesla, and a whole, not from out of this world, but just inventors, come up with these brilliant ideas and concepts and stuff. It doesn't necessarily be from extraterrestrial origin. Especially some of the stuff some of the stuff was quite primitive, but it worked. Would you like me to shift gears into energy stuff? Okay. Okay, after being frustrated trying to do something with Washington, trying to release these technologies to help the environment and solve the energy process, Dr. Greer decided to form SEAS Incorporated, Space Energy Access Systems, to try to identify inventors and bring their devices out to the public, because they've identified all the different ways in which national security acts or threaten them, or one way or another, they don't seem to make it out. And we've had a lot of inventors quite skittish about getting out there because of they've had threats and things. I'm going to show you never before photos of, I'm under a certain non-disclosure agreement. I can't get into certain technical details, but I can give you enough that to give you a good general idea about how these devices function and work. Now, I had to, in order for the sake of the protection of the inventors, I had to do one of those digital things on the faces, to protect them. This is somewhere down in the Caribbean, and I went with Professor Lauder to work on some of these devices. The device is here in this pipe, and here in the foreground, Dr. Greer, he had a thing operating on a little tiny battery, and it was putting out 500 watts and was powering all these things. But Dr. Greer said, I don't want to see any batteries. So what he did was he made an earth battery, basically putting rods of dissimilar metals with capacitors and wiring it such that it created a differential potential in the earth, and it was running this device. And this device, by the way, this is the device that when he went on Art Bell and said, I've met an inventor, he's kind of Tesla-like, and I couldn't believe it. If I never live another day, at least I've seen this device work, I know it's real and it works. We had a meter hooked onto this thing, and we measured the voltage, and we made sure there was nothing attached, nothing inside, no batteries or anything, every which way, with every kind of imaginable measuring device you can think of, measuring, see if there's any microwaves being beamed in or something. And what this is doing is, this is a rotational device using magnets, and you just gave it a little spin, and it kicked in and it started spinning on its own. And here it's powering a 300-watt light bulb, a 100-watt light bulb, an oscillating fan, and a radio blasting Caribbean music. And on the meter here, it's putting out 107 volts, and it's pretty rock steady, close to about 60 hertz. And it's put out close to 500 watts of power out of less than a tenth of a watt coming out of the Earth battery. So that was the first device, and so agreements were written and everything. And what happened was, he had an undisclosed partner, came out. This is on the seizpower.com website, the history of all this thing. And he took the inventor and hid them, and then he got this attorney in and wanted more money and this and that and that. So after a couple of months of frustration on this thing, let me get to the next thing. The inventor finally came out of hiding and agreed to put together. He said he's going to have a more powerful device that's going to be even better. And these devices down there, I mean, he had to take aluminum pots and pans and melt them down and make these discs. And I don't know if you've ever had any luck of trying to get anything out of the Caribbean, but electronic parts and stuff like that. So we were down there for about 10 days with him in his little laboratory. Here is a picture working in his place, and we're working with batteries, and he now has a new device that basically transferred the charge between a couple of sets of large batteries, which supposedly was running a hotel down there with 15 kilowatts of power, transferring his charge back and forth. And there's Ted sitting there with me. And we took the information, upgraded it. We had CAD designed a new motor using these high-powered magnets. And then this is, that's Rebecca sitting there. And Rebecca and I, we were in Virginia. We set up a laboratory, a secret laboratory. And we set up all these things, and I designed this switching arrangement here to switch between the battery and the charge. And I had the thing running for 9 hours, and it would not lose any energy, and it would just keep running. But the thing was inconsistent, and we had just a nightmare trying to get information with the inventor to nail the thing down to get it working like it was working. And just after so much frustration, we just went on, to other things. And I'll go over on some of these other things. And we're still working with him, but he's just like, he's this crazy French inventor that had a UFO experience when he was little. And he had these visions. He doesn't hardly have that much electronic knowledge, but he'll take things and put things together and wire them together. And I had to interface, because I'm the one with electronics background, and Professor Lauder has a background too, but his is more in oceanography. Let's see. I'll go over some of these. Okay, here I am with, we flew up to Utah. John Bedini is like a legend in over Unity stuff. He's been doing it for 30-some years. He's got 3 patents. This is one of his devices that's basically taking electromagnetic energy and converting it into a pulse with this motor and delivering it to this capacitor, and using the capacitor in such a way that when it discharges, it pulls energy, as he says, from the Dirac sea, from the dielectric of the capacitor. I don't know how many technical types are out there, but what we were doing was, I'll show you some more. This is the device that had a small battery that was basically running these two coils, which were pulsating like this, causing the little wheel of magnets to go round and round, hooked onto this elaborate little gearing thing, which was causing these contacts going off and on that were causing the charge to go into this capacitor and discharge. This is one of his patents. You can look up, if anybody's interested, I can get you the patents if you want to look at them. But you can go to the U.S. Patent Office on the website and get it. This is another little over unity device that is using the power of this little submarine thing.
What's it supposed to do? What's it supposed to do?
What do they do? I'll show you. Here's the pulse coming out of the capacitor. You see that light that's lit up right here? We're taking a completely dead battery that has, I mean, it's like, it's a 12-volt battery reading like 8 volts. You know, the thing's dead, it can't even light a light bulb. Charging that thing up in, within about an hour using a little small battery, what it does is the energy, with all these devices that work either using capacitor and inductance, that's the two ways that Tesla discovered how you can pull energy out of the radiance. Bedini had 2 engineers from Germany come there that were, you know, top-notch technical people, brought their own equipment in, they measured the things and they couldn't figure it out. The reason being is that it will not measure on regular equipment, but you can measure the work that it does, and what it is, it's called cold electricity. It has attributes that can do work, but it doesn't measure like normal electricity. And around every circuit, there's a huge amount of this energy that's available. And what's happening is every time that capacitor discharges, a huge amount of power is going into the battery. And the battery is not acting like a normal battery. It's acting more like a reservoir for this radiant energy, for, you know, Tesla termed it. And it could power things. I'll go into a little more detail. This is a solid state version, meaning that you didn't have to have all the mechanical things. The basic principle was he was able to isolate the input from the output in such a way that when it discharged, there was no connection to the output, and the timing of it caused this radiant energy to come in. There's Professor Peter Lindenman, who wrote the book Secrets of Cold Electricity. This is a discharge, I just happened to catch it, of the radiant energy put into a capacitor. That's the book that he wrote here on cold electricity and the solid state device. A lot of Radio Shack parts, basically for the technical types, it's basically a multivibrator circuit feeding in with a timing circuit that's isolated and just basically dumps into a capacitor, and that's all it's doing. Now this one he put into a little CD case, and this thing can charge a big tractor battery on a little 9-volt battery. You know, it's not. You know, when they say free energy, it's a misnomer. There's no free lunch in the world. You know, there's energy all around, but it's a matter of being able to pull that energy in, and the energy it has a little bit different attributes than the normal electronic measurement that most people are schooled in, you know, in college. Oh, this device here is a reproduction of the Mueller motor up in Canada that was basically using harmonics and another way of using magnetics, and we never disclosed the full information on that, so I don't want to go into any speculation on how that works. And here was another prototype from another scientist. This was an inventor who was converting a retrofit for an internal combustion engine to put magnetic coils in it to turn it into a magnetic generator. that would produce more electrical power than, and be able to retrofit it for an automobile. Now, this fellow is a brilliant physicist. He's gotten volumes of books, advanced, way over my head, all the mathematics, and has figured out the whole fluid dynamics of electron flow, and has figured out how to be able to tap it out of the air. And he's made different circuits that pull the energy in. He's gone down to the store and bought baby toys, and wrapped them with wire, and set up the cables, the table with these flat aluminum sheets, and is able to bring in power. Right here he's doing a mighty job of lighting LEDs, which isn't very much power. His theories were great, but he was never able to get up to the power level to be really practical. And he was able to substantiate a lot of his theories with us when we set up in the lab. Yes?
I have a question. With all of the, do I understand you correctly to say that you can measure the work output, but you can't measure the input of energy?
Well, yeah, what you can measure is you can measure the joules of work. You can measure the, when the capacitor discharges, you can measure the work that it does, but you're trying to measure the amps, put an amp meter on it. It doesn't read on the normal amp meter, but if you put a light bulb or something or a motor or something on it, you can see it do the work.
Now, what's the explanation for not being able to measure the input, but being able to measure the work output? Or is there no explanation?
Oh.
Maxwell's displacement.
Yeah, I wonder if I can put the mic back there. Some people.
Will somebody repeat the question?
Yeah, I have to apologize. My hearing's really bad, and I rushed out the door and I forgot to put my hearing aid of all places. I need it here,
And he was asking, is there an explanation why you can't measure the input to a capacitor?
I don't know. I don't have a good explanation for that. I'm still researching a lot of this stuff, and I don't know why that is.
Well, what I'm really at?
I'm sorry?
Okay. What I'm really asking is, if you can measure the work output, you can't measure the generating input that produces the work, correct? That's what I'm saying. Is that what I'm understanding?
You can measure the battery that's running it by trying to measure the output that's powering, to charge the battery. It's not really charging the battery. It's acting like a different function of the battery. It's actually acting as a reservoir for it. Let me show you something else here. John Bedini worked with a fellow named Ed Gray. And back in 1971 or 77, I can't remember the date, but he had a motor that was using this exact same principle, and Bedini understood this, how it worked. And he could put a light bulb into water, hold it, and not get shocked. The motor would produce like 1,000 horsepower. Scientists over at UCLA were looking at it, and they could not accept that it worked. And said, there's something wrong. They had to move it from one room to another, and kept testing it. There's no way this thing could work. And what it was doing is, and then, when you tried to get this going, then the district attorney, they came in with, a SWAT team type thing, took all of his inventions, all his papers, and tied the whole thing up. And he died mysteriously in his lab in Nevada later. But this was the picture of the tube. The whole key of this whole thing was this. These are the notes from John Bedini when he worked with Ed Gray. That basically this tube would fire, and these had a collecting plate around it. And when it fired, and the whole secret of this thing is these spikes. When you hit a spike, it's like ringing a bell where you have this harmonic type content. What would happen is when the energy just sucked in like that with a huge amount of energy, it sucked all this energy in around it. Like around everything in life is this energy fields, and this is just a method of sucking it in and using it. And he was able to power these coils that operated this electric motor. It was able to produce 1,000 horsepower, and the thing would recharge itself, and it's free. It just kept on running. More diagrams on it. But, that was all over the papers, and he was even demonstrating it in front of people.
When was this?
When, I believe, let me look here. I can see it better here. 1973, July. Let's see, back to the energy devices here. Okay, here's another interesting device that spent some time in Arizona doing. This one fellow was in the military that had an encounter with this device that it was the scariest thing to work with, to be quite honest with you. It would rotate, and it needed a cobalt magnets and a CD. It was cut in a certain way, and it had a certain field to it. And what it would do is the combination of forces would cause an antimatter type of jiggle. And this whole thing needed to be sealed in a light-tight container. And the fellow who we were trying to recreate this thing with lived with a fellow who had a house running for 3 years with a washer, dryer, and everything was running off this thing. And it was basically creating a 60-cycle jiggle, but it was antimatter, which it's like Star Trek. It's like everything operates opposite. And it needs you to need little skinny wires to transfer a lot of power, not fat wires. And when a tremendous amount of power goes through this thing, it gets cold, not hot. It's like a reverse dimension or something. And he hooked this thing up personally up to a arc welder and was arc welding with this thing. This thing is producing about 15 kilowatts. This little tiny thing with some kind of toy motor thing running around in a coffee can. And what happened was when he shorted the thing out, normally your transformer would melt down, right? This thing froze, fractured, and it cracked the windings because it with the matter in it. There's a whole lot more to the story, but the bottom line is we fired it up and it didn't work, so forget that. Anyway, they're still working on it. And just to show you some of the variety of stuff that we've encountered. This is the MEG, motionless electromagnetic generator, it stands for. Professor Colonel Tom Bearden, who we met with, there's Professor Lauder and I were meeting with Tom. He got a patent for it, and they approved the patent for it, and the thing produces 5 times more power than you put into it. And Tom is like, woo! I mean, he's got all the mathematics. He's got an incredible book called Energy from the Vacuum. It's a great big thick one. Anybody interested in over-unity systems, I highly recommend it. And the patent office, after they granted it to him, they retrieved it and said, nope, it violates the second law of thermodynamics or whatever, and they took it away. So, but the thing produces 5 times more power, and this has been independently reproduced by several people that have gotten varying, maybe 3 times output or 4 times output, maybe not the same amount, but the fact that it's producing over unity. And I've got some references here if anybody wants to write them down for if you're interested in this kind of stuff. You know, for the Disclosure Project, you know, disclosureproject.org. Seize Power is just, I'm one of the technical advisors. Colonel Tom Bearden's book here called Energy from the Vacuum. This is his website, CHENIERE.org. Professor Peter Lindenman, who we met with, who figured out how this whole thing works with Ed Gray's motor, and a lot of that information is in this book called The Free Energy Secrets of Cold Electricity. His website is free-energy.ws. And John Bedini has a website too. John Bedini mostly makes his living out of these audio amplifiers. People love the way they sound. He uses positive feedback instead of negative feedback in the circuitry, and in the lab it doesn't look good, but people like the way it sounds, and so he makes his money on making these audio amplifiers. But in the back room, in the laboratory, he's got all these things he's been doing for years. And his website is icehouse.net/John1, and it goes into, he's put on the web into detail about what I'm telling you tonight. JNLLabs.org has been independently researching and reproducing what Colonel Tom Bearden's done with a MEG generator. There's a couple of links that you might find interesting, in your research work. Anybody have any?
I thought that the whole point of Seize Power was when they found one of these things that worked, was that they were going to promote it and market it and give it to the public. So if there are all these things that work, how come they're not?
Oh, good question. Good question. I wondered that myself. No. Well, with the French inventor, we never got anything that was conclusive. With John Bedini's got all these patents, and he's not quite ready to release the information. To do it. Tom Bearden, with his device, he's no longer granting a patent. We're working out, trying to make arrangements with him to do something. The other inventor, he didn't have enough power. The Mueller motor, her father just died, and so they're sorting that out. They may do something with us. We're kind of waiting on somebody, we know they're real. We know these things do produce. We've seen it, we've measured it. It's so frustrating trying to get, somebody that we can work with to bring it out.
I heard someone who met with Stephen Greer say that the reason that inventors who have systems that won't work with Stephen Greer is because Stephen wants all the rights.
Oh, well, the reason being is that every time somebody tries to, you wouldn't be driving an internal combustion engine today if there wasn't some type of control issue, because there's been a lot of human inventions that have come out, but one way or another they get suppressed if they start to get to a certain level. And they've identified all these different ways. So what Stephen does, and it's misinterpreted as being, well, I'm the control freak, I'm going to take all control of your whole thing, is that in order for protection for the inventor and to make sure that everything gets taken care of and done in the proper ways, or somebody that comes out, I'm going to kill you, murder your family, and if you don't do this, it threatens people. They can threaten you one way or another, or just slap a National Security Act. If you violate this, you're going to prison. People are easily discouraged. So Stephen's willing to be the lightning rod on the thing. Say, you want to go, as he says, go to the dance floor with it. He'll do that. So that's the benefit that Seize does for these inventors who are afraid to come out of stuff. He's willing to go forth. He's got the people in the media. He's got all the connections. Got everything. Everything's in place. All the protocols are ready to go. As soon as we got something that's stable, solid, that we know for sure is going to be able to go to market, and then we can do it.
What rights would the inventor still retain, though?
Oh, he would get, there's a contract agreement that they make, millions and millions of dollars, live wealthy the rest of his life, plus a percentage out of everything.
Break time, Dan.
Okay.
10 minutes, everybody. Backwards and back.
Okay, Judy.
I'm just wondering if the technology that was used in the Philadelphia experiment, do you think that was extraterrestrial technology or that was from here?
What technology is that?
The Philadelphia experiment, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I am, but I don't have any personal knowledge on that.
Okay.
But don't want to go into any speculation.
Okay, that's fine. I appreciate that.
Electromagnetic.
Yeah, rotational magnetic fields.
Thank you for coming. I saw you on the videotape, so it's nice to see you in person. What I'm wondering about is, there's a lot of talk about extraterrestrial technology that the government or the secret government has it, and they're using. What you're talking about here is human inventors coming up with prototypes of maybe similar devices.
That's right.
But do you guys have access to the real thing that's already been in use for hundreds or thousands of years by these other entities?
Yeah. The technology that we're meeting with these inventors is like so crude. It's really in some form compared to the black project technologies that are hiding the advanced extraterrestrial technology. If we were to see the technology that they have behind the curtain, so to speak, it would make everything that we have technologically look like a joke. They've been, it's irritating the fact that they've been keeping this secret, for over 50 years, and that, this operation is infiltrated into our government system. And, if we have 20,000 faxes and they're not going to do anything, I mean, how can we, the only purpose I'm doing this lecture for is maybe put a seed in people or something to know that, okay, we've got all these witness testimonies. I mean, admirals, generals, and we have all kinds of astronauts even that are willing to testify under oath. And, if you had 12 people that witnessed a murder, that person would go to jail. There would be a hearing about it. People were able to swear that they saw something happen. Here you have 450 people, and they're not able to do a hearing on this, and we went to National Press Club. I mean, it's like, what's wrong with this picture? I'm just trying to figure out how we can gain control of our government again and get this illegal secret operation that's been causing pollution in the world, just because they want to maintain the control of these devices and things, for whatever their agenda is. It should be the agenda of the people. And it's a lie that's been going on for too long, and it seems like it's a closed loop where they control the media. People aren't going to find out about it. The military can't do anything about it. Congress people aren't afraid to touch it, unless there's enough outcry from the people. And so long as the media doesn't convey it to the people that there's something serious and real here, nothing's going to happen. So this loop just keeps on going year after year after year, and these operations continue to withhold technologies that could, give us anti-gravity cars, go to other planets, stop polluting the Earth. If we, there was a report done by UN scientists, excuse me one second, that showed that by the year 2004, this is back in 2001 I was reading this, that if we don't start putting these things out like cookie cutters, free energy devices that stop polluting, because it's going to take about 10, 12, 15 years or so to kind of phase this stuff in. And it would create tons of jobs and things. It's not going to take away anybody's income. That there's going to be irreversible environmental damage to this planet. But it seems as though they care less. So I don't know. It just seems like the right thing to do.
Well, part of my question is there anybody in your organization, the 500 people who have testified, do they have enough knowledge to start putting these things out, independent of the secret government, independent of industry? Do you have anybody on board that knows enough about this to start manufacturing?
Yes, as far am I understanding correctly about the ET technology?
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
500 so
yes, we absolutely, yes.
Can't you get those guys on board with their human inventors to come up with something and just put it out there and forget about patent protection, just put it out there?
Yeah. Well,
because if it's not that easy to make, then not everybody can make it, and they can still put it out there, and everyone gets their share.
I'm in agreement with you. I think it would be great, just give it out to everybody. If we get some free energy device, everybody should benefit from it. As far as the ET technology, the people who are in this black projects and stuff like that, if they were to come out with this stuff, they have serious threats against them to not come out with this thing. So unless there is a congressional hearing where we can bring people into it, that's why I tried to say on the CBS, I said, I just want to say one thing. We have the scientists willing to come forth, congressional hearing, to prove that we have these free energy devices, because that's the only way they're going to, I broke my national security oath, and you can get 10 years in prison for doing that, but I figured, I had a pretty good shot. These other guys, are going to do it too. They look kind of bad, if they have to throw us all in jail. It'd really raise a fuss, about that. So, yes?
Well, you said that it wouldn't hurt anyone, but the economy is based on oil, and it would knock a lot of, like the car industry, a lot of industries would be affected by a whole new kind of...
it'd be major upheaval, big time.
You may create some jobs making these things, but you're going to knock a whole lot of existing power structure out. And I think that's where the control comes in, isn't it? Isn't that what people are afraid of?
Yeah, I don't think it's so much money. They got all the money they could possibly deal with. I think it's more they want to just maintain control. If like Dr. Greer says, if the third world countries would have free energy devices and stuff like that, they'd be up like in one generation, up with up to the same level we are. And I guess they like to keep like 10% of the world, under control of what they have, and the rest of the 90% in this impoverished state, hardly having any technology, and that's not right. It should be for everybody,
I have a gentleman in the balcony back here. I've got the microphone, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Pass the microphone.
In the back engineering aspect of some of this material, how do you rate Philip Corso and some of the disclosures he came forth with in his book, The Day After Roswell? Are you familiar with Philip Corso?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yes. Can you explain maybe to the people who he is, and then how does he fit in with your back engineering comments?
I'm not sure I understand the question about back engineering the UFOs.
Is his information credible? Was Corso's information credible, essentially, is my question.
What part of information credible?
The material that he back engineered that was supposedly in his file cabinet.
Well, we have a witness from General Lovkin that was an Eisenhower staff that actually saw the materials and stuff from the craft that they were using to back engineer. And we have several witnesses to verify that. So yeah, I would say that's credible. As soon as I started finding out the witness testimony, I went out and bought The Day After Roswell, and then made a whole new whole new light about, you know, the authenticity of the subject.
Thank you.
Is somebody over here?
Hi. I just have one quick question. I wrote it down, so with reference to the specific devices, the inventor John Searle, I'm sure you've probably come across his work, and I'm wondering what your perception is of his rotating magnet contraption. John Searle is an inventor from England who created a magnetic generator, and the thing flew up in the air, and people have been trying to replicate it for years, and now he's making a comeback with website. There's a lot of discussion going on and so forth on that. I'm wondering if you've come across that specific device.
I have not. I've, you know, in the 9 months we were traveling, meeting with different inventors, that there was probably, you know, probably about 10 inventors we were concentrating on, and I'm actually fairly new to the subject, but I have a good background in order to jump in on this, so I learned a lot in a short period of time.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'm learning more all the time.
I'm wondering if you can't break through with this in the United States, if you couldn't take it to another country like China. They don't care about patents, you know, they have all these little places they don't want to be reliant on oil of the Western people, so release it into China and get one of your people one of your inventors to go over there and give it to them and let them spread it through the world.
You mean with the patents? Yeah. Yeah, well, anybody wants a copy of the patents, I'll be happy to, you know, this is my email address, danwillis@seizpower.com. Just email me and I'll send you the patents that we were describing and talking about. And, you know, it's public access information.
I just wanted to say something really quick. I mean, I'm not going to be able to say too much, but I just want you guys, I'm glad that everyone's here and that there's a curiosity. I have come to found, I've been studying this since I was a kid. I don't know why the interest kind of consumed me as it did. But I'm starting to realize that all of this is just part of the puzzle. All of these things are just part of a bigger picture. Have you ever seen like a poster from a distance looks like one image, then you get closer and realize it's made up of 100 or 1,000 smaller images? It's like an artsy kind of thing they do. Has anyone ever seen that? Yeah. Right. That is what's going on. Suppressing information about free energy, harnessing the media and spin controlling us into stupidity. All of these things are part of a bigger picture. It doesn't matter what country you go to. It's a global epidemic of control, ignorance, and if they blow up the planet or if they taint it for us and we can't live, the contrails are another part of it, the chemtrails. All I'm trying to say is you see, here I go. It's like, it's big. And I have to watch what I say because I don't know who's here tonight. But I encourage everybody to research across the board and realize that everything is connected. And the sooner, the more of us wake up, that's when there's going to be some kind of, I don't know what kind of power surge that will give us the green light to come out with these kinds of devices. But right now, with the system that's in place, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
We need a transformation.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's definitely the 100 monkey thing going on, you know what I mean? It's like, I notice people are popping up with stuff all over the place. And if anybody wants to, you know, email me and if you want to get active, you want to do something, you know, I'm doing my own research from what I've seen. I know works, you know, and I'm trying to reproduce it, make something reliable and stable, you know, my own research to do it. So, and you know, the more people doing it, the more minds are trying to get something. But one thing I noticed was true. Tesla discovered there's two ways to tap the radiance. One was capacitance, the other was inductance, and that seems to be consistently true.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good, okay. I will agree with the gentleman in the back of me, what he said. None of these inventions are gonna come out as long as the at least worldwide power structure is controlling everything. A bit of historical information that might be of value. This has gone on for a long time. In the old days, they wouldn't just kill them or threaten them. Sometimes they'd buy them off. One inventor was bought off for $1 million, when $1 million was a lot of money. Some of the references are the Henry L. Worthington magnetic motor, patent 1934, the Charles H. Garrett electrolytic carburetor that broke down water into its components and remixed it. That's 1929. The Pogue carburetor that would give you 10 times the amount of mileage that you get. Also, there was a gentleman called Paul Layat, who was an engineer, aeronautical engineer in World War I, building planes for the Lafayette Escadrille. What he did is he took an 18 horsepower motor, made a plywood teardrop-shaped 1,250-pound vehicle, put a propeller on it, and drove it actually at a then record 106 miles per hour in the 20s. He produced these vehicles for a dozen years in the 20s into the early 30s. So this, the suppression keeps going on, and no, it's not going to stop.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I wanted to know what the tie-in was with the extraterrestrials and these devices. I mean, are they these inventors who are doing this in their little shops and running their houses for 3 years on antimatter, where do they get the expertise for this, and how does it relate to the extraterrestrials? Are they doing this with the extraterrestrials encouraging them to do it, or what?
Well, the ET technology is, Mark McCanders sat down with me in Hilton Hotel when we were doing the disclosure and went over all the details on how the alien reproduction vehicle worked. We were using a mercury vapor Tesla tube and a primary and secondary, using some type of capacitor on the bottom of it that caused some type of compression that, squeezed the electrons into faster than light, configuration. And I don't understand the ET technology, and I'm not even going to pretend I do, but apparently...
You talk to the inventors. Where's the expertise coming from? Is it something that someone very dedicated could pick up on his own, or are they getting contact with the aliens? Where's the expertise for making these devices coming from?
Where do the question is, where the inventors...
Yeah, since you talk to them, how are they getting the information about how to make these devices?
Well, one fellow was a theorist, and he theorized, went into his advanced mathematics and figuring out electron flow, and so he figured out things and did experiments and found out that, and he proved to us, and it was true, what he was experimenting, caused greater electron flow. Some people, like the crazy French inventor, it came to him like in the middle of the night, kind of a picture
so you're saying
configurations.
These are bright people like university graduates or bright people who are doing this independent of the contact with the aliens?
I think people who are indoctrinated into the school system, that are taught it's a certain way, that it almost sets up like a structure, a framework in which they have to work out of this box. And these people are basically out of the box, that are doing new approaches that they weren't told they couldn't do, and so all of a sudden it's working, and they were told that it couldn't work. And that's the kind of people that a lot of these inventors are.
Are the aliens helping with this, or do they want this technology disclosed, or do they have any opinion
on
it?
Oh yeah, definitely. They all do, but a lot of them are... One wanted $50 million, another one was scared of his death, that he's going to be killed. Another, it's like they all have these different issues. Another one thinks that the end of the world is coming new, and there's no sense in releasing it because we're all going to be destroyed anyway. I have all these different.
But the aliens aren't helping to disclose it.
I wish, I think the aliens are, pretty much, they're just kind of, my impression of the extraterrestrials is that they are concerned about our violent nature and all of our weapons, because all of the testimony is all about, shutting down our nuclear weapons, try to blow up a nuclear weapon on the moon, and the UFO comes in, shoots, knocks it out. Every time we try to do something with nuclear weapons, they're always there. I have a friend I worked at the Naval Electronic Engineering Center that worked at White Sands, and they said World War III was stopped like, 3 times, and and also I had a friend that worked at NORAD facility. Part of my testimony that you didn't see is they were doing the right angle turns and everything, and it's I think they basically just kind of watching us. I don't know if what that base on the dark side of the moon for. Carl Wolf, I thought that was explosive testimony. Saying that he was a photographic equipment repairman at the Langley facility, and he had to go in there, and the guy that was working on it says, "Oh, by the way, we made contact with a base on the dark side of the moon." And he realized his life was in danger. That he had this information. He started showing him all these photos, and he thought it was going to be on the news. And then, 30 years later, here he came to the National Press Club to reveal that. I mean, that the fact that there's, you have to wonder. 1969 is when we went up to the moon, right? I mean, we haven't been back there since. And the astronauts, we have Gordon Cooper, we have Edgar Mitchell, as 2 of the astronauts. So there's, UFOs were flying all over the place. And NASA's, airbrushing, UFOs out. I mean, like, hello, people, it's like, what are we going to do? I kind of come here to actually get a response, to try to think what, I'm just presenting information and trying to present as facts as much as I can without my own speculation or anything, just give you what I've learned. And it kind of puts a picture together. And once you've got that picture, and I think a lot of you have that picture of what's going on, it's like, you get this futile feeling. It's like, God, the 20,000 faxes went to Washington. And it's like, well, what can I do? There's nothing you can do, I'm just trying to think, what can we do to change the situation? I guess just keep spreading the word and becoming aware, and the more people know about it, the more public outcry there might be.
Speaking of NASA, it occurred to me that they're sending the space shuttle up, they're sending liquid fuel rockets up, and they have access to these alien reproduction vehicles, which can go any place at the speed of light. It's like one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. How come they're messing around with these chemical fuel rockets, the space shuttles that are blowing up, and they have this other access to this other technology? Has anyone asked that question? They're spending all these billions of dollars on these covered wagons when they have, ET vehicles that can go anywhere. Could you address that?
You can't send that. Okay. I probably didn't hear a word you said, but I'll try to respond.
He was
Are you
asking,
talking
yeah.
about the compartmented operations that are in NASA? About one hand not
He was
knowing?
talking
No.
about why they're using such low-level technology for these vehicles that are supposed to go into space, and that they keep bungling it.
Oh.
They have access to this other technology, this more advanced technology.
Yeah, the situation is that, one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing because they don't have a need to know, and the operations are such that, like Donna Hare said in her testimony, she says, I don't know how they do this. One person can know and then nobody else knows about this, and how they do it is through these unacknowledged special access projects that are highly compartmented. And it doesn't matter what level of security clearance. You can have a secret clearance or you can have a cosmic level clearance. Only certain people, there is a cosmic level clearance. It has to deal with just the ET matter. The names they give it. But, that's why nobody, you go to an agency and nobody would know, just very, very small amount of people are really in control of this issue.
I'm just curious about where I could read more information about the dark side of the moon station or whatever is there. Where can I read about that?
Say one more time, I'm sorry.
The whatever it is that's on the dark side of the moon.
Oh, yes.
Where could I find out more about that or read more about that?
Only thing I've noticed is I was out in the room with Carl Wolf, and I talked to him a little bit about it, and he was a little nervous being there, and when he did his testimony, better I'll just show it real quick.
And people of the world. We are here today to disclose the truth about a subject that has been ridiculed and questioned, denied, with an intent to testify and to lunar orbit in their government, military, or government-connected careers.
Can you hear that okay?
At the end, we will have questions. All of you may ask questions for as long as we can stay here, and we will provide you with all the information that you need. So we will begin now with the first of our witnesses.
Good morning. My name is Carl Wolf. In the United States Air Force, I was stationed at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. In 1965, in mid-1965, I was loaned to the Lunar Orbiter Project at NASA on Langley Field. I went to the facility, and when I walked into the facility, there were scientists from all over the world. How the data got from the lunar orbiter to the laboratory. I asked the young man if he described the process to me. He did. About 30 minutes into the process, he said to me, in a very distressed way, by the way, we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon. And then he proceeded to put photographs down in front of me, and clearly in these photographs were structures, mushroom-shaped buildings, spherical buildings, and towers. And at that point, I was very concerned because I knew we were working in compartmentalized security. He had breached security, and I was actually frightened at that moment. And I did not question him any further. And a few moments later, someone did come into the room. I worked there for 3 more days, and I remember going home and naively thinking, I can't wait to hear about this on the evening news. And here it is, more than 30 years later, and I hope we hear about it tonight. And I will testify under oath before Congress that what I'm saying is the truth.
Excuse the choppiness. I was editing everything down, chopping out a lot of stuff in order to make it short.
Good morning, everyone.
This is Donna Hare about the NASA.
My name is Donna Hare, and I worked at Focal Ford Aerospace, and I walked into a photo lab, which was the NASA lab, across the hallway. I had a secret clearance, and the shadows of the craft, or whatever it was, were in the same angle as the trees. And by its very nature, UFO, and I wanted to clarify that to a gentleman that was talking to me, means unidentified. So I did not know what this was. But I realized at this point that it's very secret, that it was kept secret, because I asked him, what are you going to do with this piece of information? And he said, we always air rush these out before we sell them to the public. I don't know how they can do it, but they can let some people know about it and then others not. I'm willing to testify before Congress that what I'm saying is true, and thank you very much.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Clifford
My
Stone
name is
was
Clifford
on
Stone.
alien
I was Sergeant
retrieval.
First Class United States Army. I had a secret clearance with nuclear surety. What I'm referring to here is that I was involved in situations where we actually did recoveries of crashed saucers, for lack of a better term, debris thereof. There were bodies that were involved with some of these crashes, also some were alive. While we were doing all this, we were telling the American public there was nothing to it. We were telling the world there was nothing to it. But the whole situation is, we've set back, we've told the American people that there's no such thing as UFOs. I've been involved where we have recovered these objects. We know them to be of extraterrestrials. In 1969, I had an event that happened to me while I was stationed at Fort Lee, Virginia. We went to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. That would be my first exposure to any time that we would be recovering an unidentified flying object. When we went there, we already had people that was already in the facility. We were a backup team, which was supposed to be NBC, because there was supposed to be some nuclear materials that was on board this craft. Later on, most people involved were to be told that there was nothing on board. It was nothing more than just a crash of one of our aircraft. I know better. because I was one of the people that approached it with a Geiger counter to get surface readings. I was the first person to go ahead and see that there were bodies on it. That would be the first of approximately 12 events. UFO crashes are not events that take place every day. They're rare. I know we're not alone in the universe. I know that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It's evidence that has been denied to the American people. I stand before you today in my almighty God, and I tell you this. If Congress calls me in and says, will you testify in detail what you know, I stand here today prepared and ready to do just that. Governments must never lie to the people.
Anyway, that's all I know about the base on the dark side of the moon is basically what Carl Wolf said. That's just a couple of the witness testimonies, and I think Jordan has some more information here if you interested. Also, there's some order forms if you want to get some more information too.
Were there any representatives from Congress that you were aware of at this press conference?
They all, not that I was aware of. I scanned the audience, and pretty much press, UPI and all that. There may have been, I didn't see any, and we've gotten some letters about thank you very much for your invitation, but regrettably I couldn't show up, and so forth and so on. That's the situation. Let's see, how are we doing on time? We got 10 minutes left. What would you enjoy covering? What can I touch in?
Question 1973, UCLA incident.
Microphone? Thank you.
In 1973 in Los Angeles. Can you tell me what was the input to get 1,000 watts out?
You're talking about the Caribbean device?
No, UCLA, where they sent the SWAT team in.
UCLA.
Oh, UCLA. Oh, the Ed Gray motor. The input was he had a little car battery, and the car battery was being recharged through the system, so it was always topped up all the time, and it ran this motor with 1,000 horsepower of electricity.
Okay, so next question is all that technology lost?
Is what?
Is the technology lost?
No, I showed some of it, and I'm going to be doing some experiments. It's basically the discharge tube was the key to the whole thing, and it was used a collector. And Bedini uses a regular standard, big capacitors, in order to charge and discharge, and he pulls the energy out that way. But that technology, there's a video, they probably have in the library here, that Dr. Peter Lindemann gave. It's like a 2-tape set that describes this technology of Ed Gray in detail. He meticulously went into, and I can say that Bedini was sworn to secrecy on it, not to say anything, and then when Peter Lindemann wrote the book, he basically got acknowledgement that, yeah, you figured it out. So I recommend that book, and I recommend that video, and those websites, and you can put together some things.
What's the name of the book?
It's called the, let me bring that up. Go to free-energy.ws on the web, and the name of the book is The Secrets of Cold Electricity. And they call it cold electricity because it doesn't heat up the wires. That's the terminology, but they call it different things. Tesla called it the radiance.
So is it a low current device? Extremely low current?
The what again?
If there's no heat, then that indicates
that there's absolutely no heat. You can put your hand on this stuff. It does not heat up the way this energy works.
Is there any current at all? Measurable current?
running through the wires?
You can measure the horsepower that's putting out of the motor, that this energy is pulsing through the coils, causing a repulsion.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm interested in electrical activity. Current
Electrical
flow,
activity,
voltage.
you can measure it in joules. You can't really put an amp meter on it and measure it. It doesn't read.
Okay. Can you measure any voltage?
You can measure the voltage, yeah.
All right. And is this what's called a zero-point device? Pulling energy from so-called vacuum?
I wouldn't call it 0 point. I would call it, I don't know what the label is you put on it, but it's the capacitive discharge aspect of the radiant energy that Tesla worked with and Bedini worked with and Ed Gray worked with.
All right. And is that what they call it? Radiant energy?
Yeah, that was the term that Tesla gave, and he probably deserves credit since he was, I think, one of the most significant, inventors that contributed the most to this.
So I understand that people could essentially make these devices all day long. There's enough information published on the design, how you would design one, and so forth.
I hope so. The patents are out there.
It seems like an awful waste.
I know.
If the patent's out there and you can make it, why haven't you made it?
Well, the motorized one is out there, and the patents are on the motorized one. I'm not into all the mechanics. I like something simple and solid state, with regular electronic parts you can do. And I'm working on building the solid state version.
I thought the answer was SWAT.
Does any of this have any relationship to cold fusion? Are there any thoughts on cold fusion?
I don't. I'm not familiar with that subject.
Were you followed around by government agents? I mean, why did you have such easy access to these inventors if the government's trying to suppress it so much?
Government agents?
Right. I mean, you seem to just walk in and photograph and even tell who the people were and what books they've written and so on.
You mean as far as the energy devices go, or?
Yeah, the inventors that you showed us on the slides. Why wasn't there any suppression of that? Why had such easy access to them?
As far as, I'm sorry.
Why did you have easy access to the inventors?
Well, I'm representative of SEAS, and I'm one of the technical advisors, and I'm working. I have a lot of electronics background, and I also worked with Dr. Marcel Vogel in a parapsychology laboratory on some very outrageous things, with mind matter bridging, cutting crystals, and all these things, and with electron microscope and doing measurements and stuff.
Where was the government suppression? Why weren't you being stopped?
The government suppression is they'll slap a national security order on you. If you try to come out with something, or they'll deny the patent, or they'll offer you a lot of money, or they'll, if you go to seizpower.com, there's a analysis of all the different methods in which they, one way or another, will keep it from coming out to the public, as it has for many years.
But they didn't stop you?
No, they didn't stop Steve from going to the National Press Club, and they said, you're a dead man, if you do this, and a lot of the witnesses have had their lives threatened, not to come forth and do this. But since the National Press Club, not one of us has been threatened. In fact, if anything happens to any of us, there's going to be a lot of repercussions. Let's just say there's people, the good people, within the CIA, NSA, and everything like that, and Joint Chiefs of Staff and things that want to see, that are frustrated that they can't get this thing out. They are very supportive of the disclosure and wanting to happen, because they can't do it from where they're situated within the government. It has to be a civilian effort. The people have to outcry and want this done.
I have a possible answer for the question. Is they can't kill everybody. They've got to pick their battles. And I don't know if there's any real logic to it. That's my understanding.
it becomes futile, if it becomes common knowledge to a lot of people. In the beginning days, there was a lot of unfortunate incidents that happened.
Historical references. Got the microphone. I'm going to blurt this out before we end. More historical references. And why am I focusing on these things? Because we really have, without even super duper inventions, without, back engineering, without new inventions, even if they can't come out, you'd be surprised what happened a long time ago. From the inception of the automobile in the mid to late 1880s, all the way up until nearly the beginning of World War I, the primary vehicles, there were 3,000 manufacturers, separate manufacturers of cars in the United States alone. And of that, the predominant power sources were electric cars and steam cars. Studebaker, ever hear of a Studebaker car? The first 10 years of production, 1902 to 1912, Studebaker electric. So the thing is, we had it, but when Standard Oil, became this huge monopoly, it started suppressing it, and they started switching to the various gas engines that were also contemporarily created. Also, one more little tidbit is the diesel engine. You know what oil it ran on originally? Peanut.
I know, when I was a little kid, I used to think, in the year 2000, I'd be an old man in the 50s, and I thought, but, we'd be running around anti-gravity cars, we'd be going to other planets, we'd be, be doing all these great things, and here we are, we've still got internal combustion engines and fighting wars over fossil fuels, and, it's not the future that it could have been.
Okay. Dan, thank you so much. Thank you all of you for staying in this hot, hot room. I just want to remind you all that we do have a lot of supplementary information that supplements what Dan told us all about. And if you'd like to join the library, we'll be back here for the next 20 minutes or so. Thank you all again. See you next week.
RVML Resource Center is a volunteer-operated federal 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization. RVML is dedicated to providing easy access to a comprehensive collection of information on a variety of metaphysical, spiritual, and personal development subjects. RVML accepts and appreciates all donations. Material and monetary contributions are fully tax-deductible. This recording is not copyrighted, and permission is granted to broadcast, exhibit, or duplicate all or part of this program for non-commercial educational purposes. This live presentation was organized and presented by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. For more information, please visit rvml.org.